We're going to talk about having conversations at social situations. Every year of my life as a consultant to the financial services industry seems to have a theme, and this theme is lasting from 2017 into 2018. So I have been doing a lot of study groups and presentations and conversations about the fact that sometimes you're in a social situation and how to transition from a social conversation to getting that person isolated and possibly getting a coffee appointment with them is a critical skill. I don't think you do it because I think you don't know how. And if I give you some tips, it might help, but I don't want you to think that I'm sending you out there like wolves in the hen house to go attack people at weddings and cocktail parties and Easter celebrations or Passover Seders, because then I'm going to get yelled at. So let's go on and talk a little bit about what's going on here, if I can get these to move. Okay, number one, it's really weird, in my opinion, and of course everything that I say is my opinion, guys, so you can joyfully disagree with me and I'd be happy to have a private conversation if you don't agree with what I'm saying. But even though people seem to be more revealing about themselves through social media, on our level, when you try to talk to them about their financial life or approach people, they are surprisingly more private and defensive. My feeling, and again, remember, I teach people how to talk to people on the phone and in person. There seems to be so much less talking in person due to the digital world that I believe people are a little bit more afraid of it, and these new digital habits are profoundly working against us. The other thing that I've been getting a lot of feedback around, and some of this is age specific, but people are feeling invaded by their phone. When it rings, people feel like it's an intruder. But then again, nobody would ever leave the house without having their phone with them. So it's kind of a strange dichotomy that we have in our society now. And I think we have to work with that. And I'm constantly looking for new ideas that I can pass on to you about the fact that people don't want to talk on the phone, don't want to be invaded by their phone, but never walk out of the house without it. So one of the other things that we have to be careful of is people are being bombarded by sales and marketing messages all over the place, and that makes people feel like everybody's putting their hand in their pocket. It's very important that you always, always present yourself as building a relationship with somebody. And if some of my slides are a little bit fierce about how I'm telling you to speak and not sound salesy, it's because there may be other people, not necessarily you, who have these very hard to control monster habits. So if I get a little fierce about it, you'll forgive me if it doesn't represent you. So here's some of the things that I feel that we need to do based on the fact that our world has become profoundly digitalized. First of all, we need to meet more people in person. Nobody has spent more time advocating phone calling than me. I am the dialing queen, and if you ask me what were the statistics in 1997 for this industry, I probably have an Excel spreadsheet in my computer where I can share it with you. But because people are so defensive, because they don't pick up if you're not in their phone as a contact, your major defense against this is to do a lot more face-to-face marketing. Part of the reason we're having this webinar is because too often I get people calling, emailing, or texting me saying, I met somebody at a party, we had a really great conversation, and I felt like I lost an opportunity. And I'm not blaming you for not knowing how to maximize it, because honestly, I didn't teach this stuff 5 years ago, but now, in order to adapt to our digital world, our no pickup world, and if you're not a contact in my phone, you're dead to me. Now I'm starting to realize that the only way to get a phone call and an appointment is to have people feel more confident about who you are. So you need to give people a chance to personally assess who you are. Now, referrals are great. Nobody is a bigger fan of referrals than me, but I will tell you that you're going to get better results when people get to meet you personally and with their own eyes and ears and sixth sense, they will decide if they like you. And that is a critical thing that has to happen before somebody accepts you as their advisor. And it also shortens the time to get the trust, because now there is a need to get more trust before we get to the first fact-finding appointment. So let me share with you what some of my managers and advisors are telling me. It is harder than ever for you folks to get somebody to let you go straight into a fact-finding appointment. Really, really hard. So I need you to know that meeting somebody and doing a coffee appointment for them to warm up to you and agree to the fact-finding appointment is not a crutch, but almost a requirement. And this is new. It's only been in the last 18 months or so that I'm getting this feedback from my very senior advisors and my managers that that coffee appointment is just another way to gain their trust so that you have a successful fact-finding situation. We are relying less on the phone to create the relationship and mostly using the phone just to ask for the appointment. Now, why am I saying that? My scripts years and years ago forced you to share how you know them and introduce yourself more. That's not happening now. What is happening is they already know who you are and what you do when they agree to a phone date, which is a time when you're going to call them, and that brief phone call is when you're going to ask for the face-to-face appointment. So this is a big shift in how much your phone skills are going to create your business. It's more important for you to have better face-to-face talking skills. We still have one person that is not on mute. So if you could do that, it would be very helpful because we can hear you. So what I'm saying is that the scripting is shorter because by the time somebody agrees to the phone date to get the appointment, they either know who you are and what you do or they don't agree to the phone date. If you meet somebody in person, like for example, at a dinner party, a wedding, cocktail party, some kind of celebration, holidays are coming up, guys, so this is very timely. You will find that you can get the appointment and the coffee appointment and the fact-finding appointment with never using your phone. And that would be okay, because sometimes the phone becomes your biggest hazard to getting the appointment. So what I want to share with you is that there is a digital phoning, face-to-face, circular, three-way marketing plan that you have to have. You need to balance how much you're using your digital world, how much you're using the phoning world, and most important, and it's at the bottom because it's the foundation, not because it's the bottom of the heap, how much you're doing things face-to-face. More networking, more going out, more having better social skills, doing more marketing that allows you to meet people face-to-face before you even think to ask them for an appointment. Let me get the chat box out of the way, guys. So am I going to suggest language to use when calling unaligned clients on the phone? No, I'm not. That's not going to be one of the things that we're going to be doing today. So, okay. So your phoning and your digital and your face-to-face are all going to be part of your marketing system, and they have to be constantly put in balance. Sometimes you're going to find that you're doing more digital, sometimes you're phoning more. Sorry about that, guys. Let me go back. Hold on, I got to get this to go back. And what's going to happen is you're going to find that you're not sure. Hold on a second, my thing is going a little nuts on me here. You're going to find that sometimes you're making more digital communication and sometimes you're going to find that, give me a second here, folks, you are having more time face to face. One of the things that I get concerned about is that because it's so easy to do digital, we end up trying to set appointments digitally. This is something that I am severely against. I would really like you to not use a digital way of asking for the appointment, but use the digital world to ask for the phone call. The other thing that people are doing, let's go back over here, is people are sitting down and trying to dial their way to success. And since we're having a 13% contact rate in most of our big cities, and honestly, guys, most of my rural areas are having the same problem my big cities are having, you're finding that you can't sit and dial your way to success. So what I'm telling my managers, and some of you may be on the call, I'm telling you to throw people out of the office because people cannot make money sitting and dialing the way they used to. And nobody was a bigger fan of that than me. I mean, I dealt with call reluctance and people not having enough hours on the phone, but I would say, you know, the first 3/4 or more of my career. Now I'm telling you that because you need to set phone dates, your actual time on the phone is extremely limited. Most of what you need to do in order to meet new people is to get proactively introduced, having your clients and your contact information to the referral, so that when you try to reach that referral, you're in their phone and you're a contact to them. But the most important thing is you have to learn how to do more face-to-face marketing. Now, we haven't been doing this for the last, 28 and a half years that I've been around you guys, but I'm going to encourage you to think more about face-to-face opportunities. It's not just networking events. It's doing small breakfast meetings or seminars, or you creating client events that bring your clients to your office and agency, and asking your clients to bring a guest that you don't know. So for every client you invite, they're bringing somebody you don't know. And that's been working for some of my offices. What I'm worried about is that we're doing things the old way when the world is changing right in front of us. We have to be very careful of that. So the challenge that I have is when people say to me, Gail, I go to networking events and I come back with nothing. Or as the example was that I gave you earlier, you're doing something at a social event where you feel like you're engaging with somebody, and what is not working is that you thought that you were at the brink of being able to engage that person professionally, but you didn't transition or segue the conversation appropriately. That's what I want to concentrate on today. So here's what I want to ask you. If you go to a networking event, first of all, why are you there? Do you know why you pick a particular networking event? Your main purpose is to meet people. 100 years ago, before I even started doing my business, I met somebody who was in sales who was extremely successful in multi-level marketing. And all he told people, he was a vice president of the company, and he did seminars and rallies all around the country. All he said to people was meet people, and meet more people. And you know what? He was right. It's more important now for you to meet people. So when you go to an event, you're not trying to nail an appointment. You're not trying to find a particular kind of person all the time. At a social event, you're going there to enjoy yourself. So before you leave the house, say to yourself, why am I going to this? Just to have a good time is okay too. I don't want to make you all so neurotic that you can't go to a party and have a good time. Why do you engage with somebody? Well, at a wedding, when you're stuck at a table of 8 people and you only know one person, which is the person you came with and yourself, there's 6 other people at that table that you may not know. And you speak to people, one, because it's a socially appropriate thing to do, but more importantly, I would hope that you guys, especially being in sales, are curious about other people. Now, if you're not an inherently curious person, I can't fix that with a webinar. And if you don't approach a lot of the things that I'm going to tell you to do with the right curious attitude, you may get in trouble. One of the things I'm going to do today is talk to you about how to engage people appropriately. It's very easy for people to talk about things that are not what you only want to speak about. Like if you end up sitting next to a golfer and you're a golfer, you could spend the whole time at whatever you're at, whether it's a party, a networking event, or a 3-hour Italian wedding, you can end up talking about golf. I horseback ride, and I once spent a professional dinner meeting with somebody who was in charge, and all she and I did was talk about horses for 90 minutes. We couldn't stop talking, and I said to her, we better not do this again, because it was wrong. There's no question that we were wrong. So we don't sit next to each other when we go to those meetings anymore, because we're going to do something inappropriate. So you need to know when you're making it worse, which is obviously what I was doing. Now, the other thing that I want to know, and that's only because I'm a trainer and I care about you, but how are you qualifying people in your mind? Now, if you have a target market and you sit down at a family dinner and there's some new people there you don't know, and one of them is in your target market, that's just the luck of the draw. I mean, I went to my own cousin's Thanksgiving, which I had been doing for years. Somebody who was her neighbor, who I thought I knew, but I didn't really spend much time talking to him in the past. For whatever reason, we were the last people sitting at the table. And we started talking, and it turned out he had been with MetLife for a very long time. So we had a fabulous conversation because he's somebody I was able to talk to, for 40 minutes without batting an eyelash. So the other question is, especially when you go to a networking event, how do you disengage from somebody who either is not helpful to you, you don't think you're going to be helpful to them, or, as some of you honestly share with me, they're boring, they're dull, and you're sorry you even said hello to them. So how to disengage is going to be easy if you follow the pattern of directing the conversation so that you always have an exit strategy. You will not have an exit strategy if you don't control the conversation properly. So here's what I'm worried about. Do you have commission breath? And what that is bringing your sales language into a social situation or even a networking situation where I can assure you, you are not there to make a sale. You are there to meet people. You're there to expand your world of people you know, because by talking to some people who may not be qualified, who may not be the right person for you, you may be referred to somebody that is. And ironically, this morning, I spoke to somebody who had been asking me for a phone call. She had heard another presentation I had done when I was part of a lead generation summit last year, and she wanted to connect with me. Now, I assumed that she probably wanted to sell me something. That was not the case. It turns out I'm not her target client, but people like you are. And in fact, I did give her an introduction because I think what she's doing is good. And I think some of my clients genuinely will benefit from it. And so when I said you probably should talk to these people, she very boldly, and I admired her for this, said, would you mind making the introduction? That would help me a lot. And I appreciated the way she did it. Everything about that conversation was correct. I asked her what she did. She told me what she did. She explained it really well. I could think of people that she could benefit by showing what she does to them. She helps people to get into their target markets.
Your screen is not being shared.
If somebody's not on mute, I need you to go back on mute.
Your screen is not being shared.
My screen is not being shared. Okay, let me figure out what's going on here. Why did that happen? Hold on a second, guys. Give me a minute. Why did that happen? I do not know. Well, give me a minute here. I'll try to figure out what's going on. So what happened with this morning's presentation of this woman who called me is that she really presented herself quite well. And I was impressed. I'm not that easy to impress, guys, I have to tell you. Give me a second, guys. I'm going to figure out why my screen is not being shared. It's getting annoying to you, I'm sure. Let me do this. I'm going to share my screen again. All right, let's see if it works now, guys. Are you seeing it now? If you're not seeing it, let me know. Send me chat.
We can see it now.
Okay, thank you for speaking up. I'm talking and thinking you guys could see it. And I can't always do the chat box that easily, so thanks for speaking up. Okay, so let's go back to the commission breath thing. This young lady was not doing that. She was not doing it. She was sharing what she does in a really professional way. And I thought of somebody who she could help. And I made an introduction immediately after our phone call. It was about 30 minutes. So she wasn't coming across as trying to sell me. She told me what she did. I need you to be a little bit different in that you struggle from having a very prejudicial industry where people think they know what you do and they're wrong. And that's a big problem. So how you conduct the conversation has to be a little bit more deliberate. I hate using the word manipulative, but it's got to be a little bit more deliberate so that you don't have to constantly deal with some of the prejudices that you have against your industry. So here's going to be, this is a summary page. Okay, I'm going to go through this in much further detail. The first thing you do, of course, is you introduce yourself to somebody. Let me tell you how to start a conversation with anybody. You always talk about something you share. And one of the things that people forget is that we all talk about the weather because even with strangers standing on a line at an event or wherever, we all share the same weather if we're together in the same space. So the weather is a very easy, icebreaker. But when you're at a wedding, you say, how do you know the bride and groom? When you're at a networking event, you say, how are you enjoying the event? Now, I want to tell you another phone call I had this morning. It's almost like people somehow unconsciously knew I needed them to make these calls, so I had all this good fodder for our conversation here. I had a young man who I trained last week ask if he could talk to me this morning. I said, call me now. I could talk to you for 10 minutes. He is going to set up a table in his gym where they've had vendors before. And he remembers that some of these other vendors who were in the insurance industry, as people were leaving or passing their table to get ready to do their workout, these people were just kind of calling out to them, do you have disability? Do you need life insurance? And he thought that was pretty dumb, actually. I agreed with him on that. And he asked me, what should I do? And I said, just say hello to everybody. And the first question he asked was, how do I engage them? The easiest way to engage people is to say, how was your workout? Have a good workout. Are you going to a class? Something about where you're sharing the event. The next thing you do is ask them about themselves. So let's use that wedding example. I'm sitting next to you. How do you know the bride and groom? Oh, the bride is my cousin. We've been very close friends for years, blah, 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 blah. And then it's very socially acceptable in this country to say, and what do you do? Americans like to talk about what they do. That's not necessarily true in every culture, but we like to do that here. So if you're at a social event, after you share what you have in common, and that conversation can go on for a while, you want to make sure, though, that you ask them what they do first. I will get to what do you do if they ask you. Give me a second here, because I know you're asking that. And what you want to do is do neutral, benign first questions. And as you keep talking, you will be surprised how much detail you could go into with people when they talk about the work that they do, especially if you meet a business owner. I'm in business, and when people ask me about my business, you can be sure that I am more than happy to tell them about what I do. I can keep almost anybody on the planet talking about themselves for 40 minutes. When I do this as a study group and a role play, and I buddy up my agents with each other, one person has to be a make-believe member of the family who's sitting next to you at a wedding, and somebody obviously plays the advisor role. It was stunning how easy it was for people to talk for 10 minutes. And I said, do not make this any faster than 10 minutes. Because sometimes when you rush through this, you end up coming across as having, commission breath and wanting that coffee appointment as the only reason that you're engaging with this person. So I'm telling you to ask them first what they do so that you can get intel about them. The other part about conversation starting is knowing when to stop, which I will also get to. And one of the things you have to learn to do if you actually want to continue the conversation in another venue, which is one of the things I want you to say, and you do set a coffee appointment, you must exchange your internal self-contact, which I call your electronic business card, with that other person and get them in your phone. Because I'm going to tell you that if you ever try to reach that person again by phone and you come up as just a number and no name, you're never going to reach them again. And that's the problem with our society. Obviously, you're going to ask them to meet again. That's where you're going with it. But if you don't get into detail so that you can find out more about this person and their life, one, you're qualifying. Two, you're learning something about another human being. They may be able to be a center of influence for you. Or three, you just met somebody nice at a party and you were being a really good guest by showing an interest in them. So now the big question always is, what do you do? And when they ask you first, I know a lot of you are going to get mad at me, so I'm glad you're all on mute and I'm not reading the chat box right now. I don't want you to ever use your elevator speech. I don't want you to tell people what you do first. And if there are any managers out there, I beg you to stop telling rookies to go out and tell everybody what they do. No, no, no. Ask them about themselves. That's what you want to do. It's really important not to go around throwing your business card at people and saying I'm a financial advisor. And I'm being facetious and going to an extreme, but it's super important that you don't do that. So let me give you some of the consequences and what you might do and might not do. If you're talking to somebody and they say to you, hey, how do you know the bride and groom? And if they start the conversation, they may say to you, so what do you do? And I'm going to teach you to bounce it off of yourself and go and make them talk first. So I'm going to give you two ideas. They both work, guys. I've got people that I'm seeing every month at a particular company, and we're talking about this all the time because this is the main area of skills that people feel weak in. We talk about this almost every week, even though I come in with different agendas. The first idea, and if you're a more experienced advisor, you may be very comfortable doing this. In a very casual way, if somebody asks you first and you didn't get a chance to ask them first and keep them talking, they say, what do you do? Just say, I'm boring. Tell me about what you do. So tell me about your work and keep them talking. They'll never remember that you just bounced the question away from you. A second idea, which literally just came up last week when I was with another group, somebody very benignly said, I'm a consultant and I'm boring, so let's talk about you. And he used the word consultant, which is innocent and true. He did not say financial, and he bounced the questions to the other person and got them engaged in talking about themselves. Guess what everybody wants to talk about? Themselves. So you don't have to worry about that because people are more interested in talking about themselves. So here's what you want to do. You want to get people to talk about, and I'm going to give you questions and we're going to go over, it's a very big slide, you're all going to want to have copies of it, I understand. But what you want to do is you want to get enough intel about that person so that while they are talking, you now reposition your answer to the question, what do you do, in a way that relates to them. I'm going to tell you what my total objection is to an elevator speech. You just telling somebody, I'm a financial advisor and I specialize in working with small business owners, is like vomiting who you are on me and I don't know what to do with it. So even if somebody asks you first, your standard answer has to be either, I'm a consultant, but my work is boring, why don't we talk about you first? And get them involved in talking Or say, I'm boring, let's talk about you, and immediately get them involved in talking. The best elevator speech doesn't work in these situations. What you need to do is ask people about themselves, get them to talk, get a lot of intel on them. That's what you have to do, so that when you get enough information, here's a funny thing about conversations. If I keep asking you about yourself, and I get you to talk for 10, 15, even 20 minutes, if I stop asking you questions, what happens is the other person starts to realize they've been doing all the talking. You just have to have a little bit of silence. And they will jump in and say, oh, so what do you do? Now you have to make sure to time that silence after you've gotten them talking so that you have enough information about them, that when they say to you, what do you do? Your next sentence, and if any of you are taking notes, poise your pen. I'm going to give you 5 really critical words. What you're going to say is, you know when you said. Those are the most 5 important words you need in a social situation. You know when you said, and now you're going to grab something from their conversation with you, and you're going to have that and wrap your business around it. So here's one thing you can say. If they actually present a dilemma, like if you say to them, so what's the hardest part of your business? And you've been talking for a while, and they say, you know, I really have a hard time retaining talent because I'm in the, you know, the tech world. I get outbid on talented people, blah, 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 blah. You could say to them, you know, it's interesting you say that because I actually have a client in the same situation as you. And you can only do this if it's true. But this is the one that's easier, because you can say to them, you know, when you said that you love the work that you do, but you hate all of the stuff that you have to do in terms of benefits and taking care of your employees and hiring people. I work with people who are in that very situation. You got to grab something from the conversation that actually you can wrap the work you do around that and say a benefit. You can't just throw out a random benefit of something you do if you don't know that that person's going to care. So if I'm a mom at home and I got 2 little kids and you talk to me for 30 minutes, you may find that the only thing you can wrap yourself around is the fact that she has 2 little kids, and yes, she wants them to go to college. And you can say, you know, when you said, you know, you want your children to go to college and it's pretty expensive. Well, I work with families who are in that situation. How do you save for college and make sure that you can retire as well? So sometimes you have to keep people talking until you actually can grab onto something. Now I'm going to say something really radical. Sometimes you could talk to somebody for 30 or 40 minutes and not find anything that you could say that the 2 of you that you can jive with, or they don't appeal to you. That happens. This doesn't work all the time, which is part of why, if you're in a social situation, I'm more concerned about you trying to nab people who are clients. It should happen more that you are interested in talking to people. In the process of doing that, you actually end up with somebody who is interesting to you. So somebody, well, here we go now. Now my computer's doing this again. Sorry, guys. Let me try to handle some of the questions. So will they ask you again after you say you're boring? Probably not. I haven't had anybody who's had that problem where when they say, you know, I'm boring, let's talk about you. Because what you have to do is you have to really be fast at engaging somebody and talking about themselves. So that's a really good question. What do you do if they ask you again, so what do you do? You know, if you just can't get somebody to talk to you because they're resistant, then you just have to say what you do and just enjoy the social conversation as much as you enjoy the conversation. So that's something that you have to learn how to do, is just give in when you're losing. Sometimes this doesn't work, guys. Most of the time it does once you get good at it. It's amazing how much people want to talk about themselves. I'm sure you're not surprised about that. So here are some things about transitioning from being in a social situation to getting them to talk about their business. Number one, when they ask you, so what do you do? And you say, you know, when you said, and you bring in something that might genuinely be a problem for them, you can't now start soapboxing about the solutions. You don't want to start over educating people about how you handled that situation for another client who you say, I had somebody in the same situation. They may say, well, what did you do for them? And you could say, well, it was similar, but it was not the same. And then start going into long stories about work that you did for other people. Or even if they share that they have a dilemma and they say, what do? You say, you know, when you said, they're now super interested. I mean, they could start asking you to solve the problem right there at the wedding table. I mean, you don't want to do that. And last but not least, you don't want to be super specific. You don't want to be specific. You want to get another appointment, a coffee appointment. And here's what you want to do. You want to say, if the conversation is super interesting, they say to you, what do? You say, you know, when you said blah, 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 and then you start engaging around their life, their business, whatever. And then you really find that the two of you are enjoying yourselves even more. What you have to do is know when to stop, which was on one of those slides. What you want to do is say, I really think we should continue this conversation. We probably need to take it to another venue. At this point, we're actually being bad guests. So what I'd like to do is get your information in my phone, get, you know, you and mine and yours, and we should set up a coffee appointment for next week, and we can meet at a Starbucks near your office. And get into their phone, get the coffee appointment, and then say, you know, we've really been bad guests. We've been just hovering around each other for the last 30 minutes. We should probably both mingle. I'm sure my husband is mad at me now. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, I did that. I was at a party where I was very specifically introduced by the host to somebody who owned an insurance agency. She said, I have somebody you're going to want to meet. Steve, you're going to want to meet Gail. Well, she was right. And we were standing and talking, I am not exaggerating, for at least 45 minutes. And that was not right. If I was going to be working with him, I should have asked him if we could meet at his place at another time and I could give him more information about my seminars. And we should have stopped. At one point, his wife came over and we kind of didn't care that we were being rude. And then a few minutes later, my husband came over. And don't do this. I've never done it again, by the way. I've only done it once. So I made the mistake once. But it's very possible that you get like really involved with only one person. Sometimes you just do it because you're interested in them personally, like what, you know, my friend who is the VP at a company and I did around horseback riding, and what we did was wrong. Or you do it for a business reason, which is what this guy Steve and I were doing. We were very interested in each other. You can't let it go on too long. You're being a networking snob and you're being a social snob. You're being inappropriate. So part of it is being aware of how much you're talking. And once you get past the 10-15 minute point, if you want to meet them for coffee and you are fascinated by them, fine, let it go. Ask for the coffee appointment, get in their phone. And somebody asked me last week, well, I don't want them to think that all I did was talk to them only to get the coffee appointment. How do I stop it and not seem like I was just doing it for a self-centered reason? Well, there's two answers to that. That coffee appointment should have a benefit to the other person. Otherwise, they're not going to agree to it. And two, if you say, you know, the two of us have kind of been bad guests at this point, probably we should mingle with other people, but I'm really looking forward to continuing this conversation when we have coffee next week. That's it. Now, when you're at a networking event, it's a little bit different. And I'm going to get into some specific questions that you could ask at a networking event, which gives you the ability to stop the conversation at any time, either when you get what you want or you want to disengage because you're actually talking to somebody who you're not interested in. And that's a possibility. So here are the questions to ask. I'm going to leave this slide up for a while because there's a lot of them. And most of these came from my friend Michael Goldberg, who is the networking teacher. And I made him write these questions down because a lot of my newer advisors are struggling to keep the conversation going. And if any of you want a copy, of these questions, just email me and I'll send them to you. But here's how it goes. You start with what you're both at. Have you been to this event before? And what keeps you coming back? Maybe somebody says it's their first time. If somebody says, oh my God, I've been going to this 100 times. How did you learn of it? How did you find this group? What type of work do you do? Now you're getting into who are you? Who are you? I'm going to tell you who I am later. But again, if you're swift, you can get anybody to talk about themselves. Do you like what you do? Innocent enough. How did you get involved in this field? Well, that question alone can end up being a very, very long conversation. Somebody might just say, I inherited it from my father, in which case you may move into a different path and say, is it a family business? Yes, it is. How many of you are working in the company? You may go on a different path than all of these questions. These are just a way for you to get people to engage with you. So absolutely, you can't stick to this as if you're the CIA and I told you these are good questions and they work in a nice order. If the person says something that puts you in another path, it's like Alice in Wonderland. You fall down a rabbit hole and you're talking to a Cheshire cat, have a conversation with the Cheshire cat. Guys, don't put your email addresses on the chat box. I need you to send me an email, which I'll tell you how to do that at the end, and then I'll connect this to an email separate from this. So if somebody is a little bit not forthcoming, what I think is helpful is some of these conversations, some of these things here. It's easier to get people to talk if you've got these under your belt, okay? So I'm giving them to you so you have a whole bunch of ways that you could get other people to talk. So here's the part that is important. When you go toward this, look to the lower right over here. Who are you looking to meet here? Who's your perfect prospect? Let me tell you why you need those.
Sorry about that. I was turning off my tablet.
Okay, Michael, don't worry about it. I've been making mistakes too. So if you ask somebody, who are you looking for? Who's your perfect prospect? Who are you marketing to? And you find you're bored out of your mind with this person. It has happened to me, guys. I still get feeling like I'm pulling people's teeth to make them to talk to me. What I find is that if I get a little bit of intel about who they're looking for, and I then to say to them, you know what, Michelle, it's been great talking to you. I don't think I'm your target person, but I know that there are other people here that might be. So what I think is best is if I let you go, it's been great meeting you, shake their hand, wish them luck, and then you can walk away. But if you don't have that question in your repertoire, you guys can get stuck going through these questions going, how the heck do I get out of this? How the heck do I get out of this? And I understand that scary feeling. So learning how to disengage is just as important as engaging. Because when you guys go to meetings and events, I need you guys to go on mute. Michael, there's somebody who's not on mute. Michael Broderick, your group is coming on making noise.
One of my first cities.
Cotton?
Yeah, one of my first cities.
Oh, wow.
Got it. So here's the deal. You have to have both ends of the conversation under control. One, I really want them to talk. How do I keep them talking? And some of these will get you rolling. Here's what I have found. I've done these with rookies. They're very anxious. They don't know how to make small talk. They don't go to a lot of networking events. I just give them some of these questions, And once they get the ball rolling, wow, they're doing just great on their own. The disengaging is a whole lot harder. So what I'm saying is some of the questions toward the end on the lower right here, do you have a target market? Who's the perfect prospect for you? Who are you looking to meet here? Allows you to say, it ain't me. And you can disengage from somebody who is not helpful to you. You don't think you'll be helpful to them, or you don't like them. That's okay too. By the way, you don't have to like everybody. This is a great page of questions to have. Again, email me, and I'm going to give you my professional email address, guys. I will get this to you as quickly as I can today. My email address is just Gail, G-A-I-L, at phoneteacher.com. I have that on the last slide as well. I have my phone number. I have everything for you in a minute. We're not quite at the end. So what I'm concerned about is when you're at a social event or you're actually at a defined, we are in business to network event, that learning how to engage people first and then saying, you know, when you said, so you could wrap your financial practice around something they told you, which they're going to care about. Then they care about it. The two of you get into a conversation, and then you say, I really love to continue this conversation. We probably need another venue, so I'd love to suggest that we go out for a cup of coffee in the next couple of days or next week, whichever is better for you. And then you've got to get in their phone. I can't say this enough times, guys. I know I'm being a nasty mommy, but one of the things that happens is that people get all excited. They get the appointment, they put that in their calendar, and then they forget to get the person in their phone as a contact. And more importantly, you being in that person's phone as a contact. If you want to confirm the coffee appointment and you text, looking forward to meeting you tomorrow at Starbucks, and they don't have you in their phone, they don't know who you are. If they want you to email them, you want to make sure that they know who you are. So people live and die by these smartphones, and they're brilliant and they're wonderful, but sometimes you have to be very deliberate in being careful to get into people's phones and being a contact. Now, if you're not a professional contact in your own phone and it's not textable, you've got to work on having yourself in your phone professionally as a contact. You can't just say Gail Goodman and my phone number. It has my name, my title, my cell, my office number, my address, my company name, my website, my LinkedIn link, which I just fixed yesterday because I didn't even have it right in my own phone. Sometimes LinkedIn is the hardest part to put in your contacts, guys, because at the bottom where it says social media, if you have the LinkedIn app, you can't copy and paste your URL on LinkedIn from the app and put it into the contact section of your phone. The app will not allow you to do that. I'm just giving you just a little extra advice here. Okay, what I'd like to do is review the sequence for you. So the first thing is starting the conversation. There isn't much difference between social situations and networking situations. The only difference is that in a social situation, you may have more small talk about what the two of you have in common about the event or the people that invited both of you. Engaging the other person first, asking them about themselves first is the most critical. Remember, if you're at a networking event and somebody says, hi, Gil, so what do you do? I could say, hey, I'm a consultant. I'm a little bit boring. I'm tired of talking about myself. Tell me about you. They're not going to care. They're really not going to care. People love to talk about themselves. You got to be fast at this. The most critical part, which a lot of us who are good talkers are not good at, is to listen and ask sequential questions that make sense in a row. If you end up going in a direction that wasn't part of the questions that I can give you, follow where they're going, because you're going to find that you get the most useful information when you let them talk in a particular direction. Now, if they start going on a tangent, like, oh, I'm in business with my family. How's that working? Oh my God, it's not working really well. You know, my brother's like a really crazy person. He's like a narcissist and he thinks he's in charge and my father's still alive. And now suddenly you're getting into these crazy psychological family dynamics. Those of you who've worked with family businesses know that if that's your target market, you're part psychologist as much as you are a financial advisor, and more so than the average advisor. But if that person starts taking the conversation off on a tangent where you don't want to go, gracefully move the conversation back to where you want it to be. So tell me more about what the company does and who some of the other employees are, and try to get them away from, you know, the BS around the family dynamics that are not as interesting to you. You have to learn how to control the conversation without being controlling. I mean, I was at a party quite a while ago. My neighbor across the street had a Valentine's Day party just for married couples. It was really a very lovely party. They live in a very large, beautiful antique house, and she always does kind of a buffet, and everybody gets to sit all over this beautiful house. And I went into the den, and one of her friends sat down next to me. We didn't really know each other. And, you know, I did exactly what I was talking about. You know, we talked a little bit about, you know, Jill and Gary, and she said, how do you know them? And I said, I live across the street, and how do you know Jill, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, I did what I teach you to do, because I am genuinely interested in people. And this woman does something that I dare you to email me and tell me that you've ever met anybody that did this. She is somebody who scouts private homes for movie directors. Like, she walks up to people's houses and rings the bell and says, we'd like to have your house in a movie. I mean, it's kind of an amazing job, and there's probably only 3 people in America that do it. But I can tell you that I was totally fascinated by this. Absolutely fascinated. And I had this woman talking for almost 45 minutes. Eventually, you know, we both had to eat some dinner because we were there. I was asking her questions and she was answering me, and I was totally fascinated by her, right? And she was talking because I couldn't stop asking questions. So we were eating dinner, and then of course she said, what do you do? And she thought what I did was kind of interesting. We were sitting in that room all by ourselves, having a wonderful time. The next morning, I get a call from my neighbor, Jill. And she says to me, hey, Gail, it's Jill. I go, hi, Jill, great party, blah, blah, blah. She said, what'd you do to my friend, Suzanne? And the first thing I thought is, oh, crap, I'm in trouble with Jill, right? I said, nothing. I just talked to her and had dinner with her in the den. And she said, she's totally in love with you. What were you two talking about? Well, what happened is I asked Suzanne about herself, and I really was fascinated by her, and she was flattered. And she left that party telling Jill how much she loved me. I liked her too. So these things work well when they go well. And this was a social situation. I had no interest in making her a client, but I learned something really important. When you're genuinely curious and interested in people, they like you. You also have to, if you think this is going to go further and you suddenly stepped in some good you-know-what, you're sitting next to a great prospect. He or she is a physician, a business owner, they have a big company, they're a CFO, whatever, and you want to take it further, be very careful about how far you go at the party if it's social. Even at a networking event, you don't want to only meet one person, but you don't want to go to a networking event with the intent to graze and give out your business card and share business cards and then not meet anybody, because people won't let you follow up. I mean, it's amazing. I have a networking group here and people don't follow up. They get mad when you try to have a second appointment with them after we have this leads exchange group. And the leader had to stand up last month and say, don't get mad at people if they follow up with you. And I'm sitting there going, what is wrong with this group? Everybody comes for the free lunch and nobody wants to do business with each other. Why don't we just call it a party? Because I thought it was a networking event. So I don't give out my card. And I'm going to tell you guys that I absolutely don't believe in business cards that are paper anymore. I am really beating up my favorite clients to stop giving them to everybody. I don't want you to have business cards, because if you can't get in somebody's phone, you have no chance of getting them on the phone. You have to be in a phone as a contact. I picked up a call today. It was Chicago. I didn't know if it was somebody that I thought I was supposed to know. They weren't in my phone. What was it? It was a telemarketer. And that's why people don't pick up their phones, because you will never stop having cold telemarketing calls to your smartphones. And people say to me, why can't we stop this? Why doesn't the FCC go after them? Let me tell you why, guys, because I get this question a lot and you may be curious. Number one, they are all robocalls with machines that have voices, as you can tell. The machines are not in the United States. You just put it 1 foot over the line in Canada or Mexico, it's out of the jurisdiction of our FCC. So it's never going to get solved. And because people know that it's never going to get solved, they don't pick up their phones, especially if you live in the same area code. I moved from 914 to 615. I get all telemarketing calls at 914 because everybody who's 914 that I want to talk to is in my phone. 615, I tend to pick up more often because I may have somebody here in Nashville that I don't have them in my phone yet, but I need to talk to them, and that does happen. So going back to, you want to share your contact information, and leading to the follow-up meeting or a phone call, here's the language. I think we should continue our conversation in another venue. When are you free for coffee or lunch in the next 2 weeks? Whichever one you prefer. And then the coffee appointment is a whole nother seminar. How to do that to get to the fact-finding appointment. I think it's really, really hard, guys, to get to a fact-finding appointment when you're standing right there. It's the rare occurrence. Somebody might have thought they died and went to heaven. You're a financial advisor, you specialize in people like that, and they go, oh my God, you have to come visit our company. Fine, that's a miracle from heaven. Grab the bull by the horns and go for it. Get the appointment, take out your calendar, set the appointment and go and bypass the coffee appointment. But don't expect that to happen too often. I do really think that that is the rarity. So what I want to do now is leave like 3 or 4 minutes at the end for questions. If you want to go into the chat box, and I'm going to leave my contact information up for you guys to be able to reach me. My cell number is the one that is on the top, because if you need to text me something quick, I want you to have my cell number. And my email address is gail@phoneteacher.com. And I'm giving you my snail mail address if you ever want to write me a letter, but I don't get too many of those if you want to send me a card. But my birthday already passed. So if you have a question and you want to go into the chat box, go right ahead. And if you do need to talk to me afterward and you want to speak to me, I want you to email me and then we could set up a phone call. I'm happy to talk to you if it's worthy of a phone call. If it's a quick question that I can answer through email, we'll do it that way. If anybody has any questions, put them in the chat box now. That would be a great idea. And if those of you who are having to rush off to an appointment, yes. Oh, Deborah, you asked the best question of all, guys. She's not a shill. She said, is there a specific app you use for your digital business card? No. Deborah, thank you for asking. I want you to just use the regular contact option in your regular phone, okay? Because if you try to use some of those V cards, somebody did this to me, Deborah, and I hope everybody's listening. I couldn't open it. That person never ended up in my contacts, so that if they ever called or texted me, they came up with a name. So you gotta watch out for using those apps. Don't get a business card app. I don't want you to use that. Just use the regular contact section of your phone, whatever that phone came with. What is a good way to do a walk and talk? Like, I don't know. That is a great question. And I just talked to one of my clients yesterday who knows how to do it. And unfortunately, not that many managers know how to do it because they all grew up in a very strong phoning era. I'm not a walk and talk teacher. I think that's another skill set. And I hope that if any of you want to do more canvassing, which is a great way to spend time when you don't have appointments, you know, I'm not against business cards, I'm against paper ones. But I can teach you canvassing, but thank you for asking. And I think it's something you need to learn how to do. So am I against business cards? I'm against paper cards because people use them inappropriately. I have them, I stopped carrying them. I actually only give them to people that I don't want to follow up with when they say, do you have a card? Because I don't want to get in their phone if I'm not interested in them. So I use it as a defensive technique. The reason I tell managers not to give them to rookies is they use them inappropriately and they don't learn how to do what I want them to learn how to do. Yeah, Termia, I don't know about canvassing. You can email me about it. I really wish I had more answers. So how do you handle Chamber of Commerce luncheon meetings? You get to talk to the people that are on your left and right, kind of like weddings. Jay, this is a really good question, actually. And if you can get up and mingle with other people. So I think that you have to try to deal with the people that are at your table, similar to when you're at a wedding and they put you at a table. So yeah, chamber luncheon meetings can be challenging. I go to them all the time, but everybody gets to stand up and talk about who they are. Yes, if you said you're boring and the person may not ask you again what you do, that's not what's going to happen. Cisco, you got to believe me on this one. You and I talk all the time. We could talk about this privately. If you say I'm boring, let's talk about you. They forgot about it when you've gotten them to talk for 15 minutes. You get silent and then they go, so what do you do? They will, it works, Cisco, you gotta believe me. Thank you, I appreciate all the thanks, guys. There is a recording of this, guys. It won't be finished for about 10 or 15 minutes. Yeah, Richard, I will, if you want the recording, the slide should come out with the recording. So, you can definitely get this with the verbal stuff and the slides from the recording. And it takes about anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour for me to get an email that the recording has been properly transcribed. So yeah. Yeah, it does work. Yeah, they do want to judge you if you're boring. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you being on here. And privately. Thank you. I'm going to be turning everything off now.